Welcome to Introduction to OASIS and Pricing Policy Changes for Customers. This is the first of a series of modules developed specifically for customers in OASIS. This module provides an overview of what OASIS is and how OAs will be viewed and approved in OASIS. We'll show you the new streamlined OA format and highlight important pricing policy changes you'll notice as you interact with OASIS. Please note, this module does not demonstrate how to use OASIS. Those instructions are covered extensively in subsequent training modules. Now let's get started. OASIS is GSA's occupancy agreement and space inventory system. It replaces GSA's current OA and drawing systems, as well as EOA, the system many of our customers use to view billing OAs. OASIS allows us to move the OA review and approval workflow from a manual, primarily email-based process into an integrated, trackable, and accessible system. OASIS provides customers the ability to view and download rent data, view the modification history of OAs, and submit questions to GSA about rent bills right in the system. All release of space notices will need to be submitted in OASIS, which provides the ability to track the approval and timeline of the release of space request. Once space is confirmed as vacated, it's a fast update to stop billing. So what changes with OASIS? As mentioned earlier, the entire OA process will be inside OASIS. So no more OA emails, no more wondering who got an OA or whether someone else approved it already. For GSA, it will be clear who in an agency should receive the OA for review and approval. OAs will be sent, reviewed, approved, and tracked right in OASIS. In addition, the OA document has been significantly streamlined, allowing you to see all terms quickly and easily. OAs will only be sent when tied to specific events, such as awarding a lease contract. We are eliminating the information-only OAs, so you will receive OAs less often, and any you receive will require your approval. Importantly, you will always be able to view your OAs and OA data without having to request that from GSA. So that's what's changing. What's staying the same? The OA remains the financial agreement between GSA and the customer agency. Customer project agreements, or CPAs, will continue to be used as project planning documents and the source of cost estimates. And Rentest and ROW will continue to operate as they always have. For those unfamiliar with these systems, Rentest provides customers with an estimate of future rent charges approximately 18 months in advance of the start of the fiscal year. Rent on the Web, or ROW, allows customers to view their current and historical monthly rent bills online. Now that you know the high-level view of what's staying the same and what's changing, let's dive into the details on how you'll receive and approve OAs in OASIS. The first OA you receive will be sent immediately before the lease contract award or owned construction contract award. That means you will be receiving significantly fewer OAs overall, and each OA you receive is associated with a contract awaiting award or a material change in your OA, such as an increase in TI principal, expansion of space, or switching to non-cancelable space. You will no longer receive OAs just as information only. Once the OA is approved, OASIS keeps a modification history, so everyone will know how many times an OA was revised after it was approved and the reasons for the modifications. Once OASIS goes live, OAs must be approved in OASIS. However, any OAs you signed prior to OASIS deployment remain valid and can be used through fiscal year 2024, meaning you should not receive a request in OASIS to approve those OAs again. You also should not receive any requests via email to sign an OA, as those cannot be accepted or used under the new OASIS process. Each of GSA's customer agencies were asked to provide a list of their ordering officials, the users designated to review and approve OAs in OASIS. You are likely one of those ordering officials since you are viewing this training. Ordering officials are the only customer agency personnel who can approve OAs on behalf of the agency. Since GSA's current practice doesn't limit who we send OAs to, you may ask, will GSA share OAs with any customer agency personnel who are not ordering officials outside of OASIS? The answer to that is no. We will not be printing or emailing copies of OAs outside of OASIS to anyone. If there is a non-OASIS user in your agency who requests an OA or has any other OA-related question, we will refer them to the agency's designated ordering officials. We expect this type of request may come from customer agency project contacts, and we will continue to work with them on the projects themselves, just not on the OAs. The OASIS OA approval process is flexible to accommodate different agency approaches to OA review and approval. OAs from all GSA regions will be sent to a single customer agency queue. Ordering officials will receive notifications when an OA approval is needed. Within OASIS, you can assign an OA to yourself and then assign it to other ordering officials as a way to coordinate different levels of review. Agencies should consider their internal process for reviewing and approving OAs in OASIS. Let's review a few examples to see how this would look in practice. The person at Agency A who currently signs OAs is Monique. Agency A has also designated Monique as an ordering official in OASIS. Monique can approve the OA in OASIS. Agency B has a two-step OA review process. Darren signs OAs under the current process after Kathy reviews them. To replicate the process in OASIS, both must be OASIS users. Kathy can review the OA first by assigning it to herself and then reassign it to Darren after her review so he can approve the OA in OASIS. Agency C's CFO prefers to sign OAs but won't be an OASIS user. She has a team that reviews OAs prior to her signing them, though, and that process can continue. Tom can review the OA in OASIS and download or print the OA for Camila's review. Once Camila signs the OA, Tom can click the Approve button in OASIS. Tom has the hard copy approved by the CFO, and OASIS records that Tom approved the OA. We've been talking a lot about OAs and how to approve them in OASIS. Now we'd like to introduce the new and improved OA format. Just to make sure we're all starting from the same point, let's establish what exactly an occupancy agreement is. Here is the formal definition. The OA is an interagency agreement memorializing the rent between GSA and its customers. When PBS is awarding a lease or construction contract, the OA obligates our customers to fund current year rent and commits them to request funds for rent in future years. Compared against the OA's definition, we realized that the OA had changed over time to serve different purposes outside of memorializing rent, such as documenting PBS pricing policy or communicating project agreements. We needed to streamline the OA and take it back to basics. The pages of boilerplate text are gone. The pricing desk guide has all of that language now. Rates have start and end dates, and you can have different blocks of space with different dates and rates. No more blending of space and no more pages and pages of financial projections. We added a couple of new features too. For example, the OA document will display the name of the person who approved the OA and the date and time that approval was made in the footer. We have also added 3 open data fields to the OA for customer use. Agencies can use these fields to associate an OA with an internal organization, an accounting code, point of contact, or any other data they need. We analyzed the OA clauses extensively and made the decision to remove all clauses except the ones covering the basic obligation to pay rent, broker commission credits, free rent, and the agency-funded shell. We did this primarily because most clauses simply replicated language in the pricing desk guide. We also removed ad hoc and agency-specific clauses, which our analysis revealed to be inconsistent across GSA, or restatements of OA terms such as the number of parking spaces, or even unapproved deviations from pricing policy. Note that removing clauses does not change our policies. Customer agencies continue to have all the rights specified in the pricing desk guide, such as cancellation rights. They just aren't spelled out in the individual OAs. In summary, most OAs will have just a single clause stating that the customer will pay rent in accordance with the pricing desk guide. We understand that some customers may be used to using the OAs to document strategic agreements or project-specific instructions, but the OA is no longer a Swiss Army knife used for everything. The OA now only reflects actual terms. So what can you use instead of OA clauses? Depending on where you are in your project, instead of the OA, you can use the CPA or Customer Project Agreement for planning and estimating, or Rent Desk for future budgeting. A memo, MOU, or meeting minutes could be used to document project-specific instructions or agreements. Let's review what all that unnecessary boilerplate text and unneeded clauses looked like. This is an OA chosen at random. It's 22 pages long. That's a lot of content to review and cross-check before approving. Now, this is the OA makeover before picture. Now let's look at the after. This is it, the entire OA, from 22 pages to 2. This format reflects the OA's official purpose to memorialize the rent between GSA and customer agencies. You'll notice the OA has 4 sections: general, location, financial, and approval. You'll notice the standard occupancy term clause is there in the general section. Customer agrees to pay rent in accordance with policy. Also in the general section, you'll notice there are those 3 numbered customer identifiers. Those are the open fields that customers can use for whatever they want. We mentioned that earlier. The financial information section shows rates with start and end dates. You'll notice TI is one line with an amortization duration, not a rate per square foot as before. More on that later. If there were a step rent on this OA, you would see a separate shell rent line with its own start and end dates. And were this one approved by a customer in OASIS, the approval information section would show the approver's name and timestamp of the approval. In summary, we got rid of a lot of unnecessary text. We got rid of ad hoc clauses, but if you want documentation of some non-OA details of your occupancy or project, ask for a CPA, memo, or other method to document the understanding. We got rid of physical OA signatures and now have approvals in OASIS. And we got rid of pages and pages of financial details, replaced by a list of rates with start and end dates. Before we finish this presentation, we want to highlight some pricing policy changes that you'll notice in OASIS. The changes involve tenant improvements, joint use, and the need to approve new lease OAs, as well as several policy changes that apply to owned occupancies only: open-ended terms, release of space, building rate terms, operating and parking rate escalations, and spatial data remeasurements. As noted earlier, TI is just one line now, billed as a monthly amount, not a rate per square foot. You'll see here the OA shows an expected cash amount. That is actually the annual amount. Also note that customer agencies can buy down the full TI amount, both general and custom. Joint use is going away at the end of this fiscal year, but until then, joint use will show up on OAs as one unit of monthly rent. A recent policy change makes all new lease OAs and all continuing lease OAs except extensions non-cancelable. This means that nearly every new and changing lease OA will require customer approval. This policy is temporary and is set to expire at the end of fiscal year 2024. In owned occupancies, one big change you'll notice is that there are no expiration dates. Individual OA rates like shell and operating continue to have expiration dates, but the OAs themselves are open-ended. Customer agencies just give us notice when they're ready to leave their space, and the move-out date becomes the expiration date. Move-out dates are only used when an OA has a known end date, as in the previous example, or when the agency has moved into swing space or has a specific and short-term space need, such as when the Secret Service requires an office during a presidential transition. Move-out dates are not to be used to create an artificial OA term. We understand some agencies may want to stick to old practices and have an explicit expiration date, but that is not an option in OASIS. A stated move-out date also is not a guarantee that rent stops on that date. The process to confirm the agency has vacated space is still in place, and if the agency is still in the space after the move-out date, it will continue to be billed at the current rate. Although agencies must still provide a notice to release space, the requirement that the notice be 4 months in advance has been removed for owned space only. We still expect the notice to be reasonably timed, in other words, not the day before you move out. And the space must still meet the other release criteria specified in pricing policy, such as the space must be in marketable blocks and the agency no longer has a need for the space. All customer releases of space must be submitted in OASIS, meaning GSA cannot submit releases of space on behalf of a customer agency. This is different than GSA-initiated releases of space, though. If the agency is initiating the release, then they must submit that release in OASIS. Once the customer vacates the space, we confirm move-out in OASIS and billing can stop immediately. Building rate terms, or BRTs, are set shell, operating, and parking rates and terms at the building level, not the OA level. BRTs are for 10 years and have now been established for every owned building. What does this mean for OAs? It means that all OA rates within a building will have the same expiration date regardless of when the customer moved into the space. When it's time for a BRT reset, all the OAs in the building will get the new 10-year rate. If you move into a space in the middle of a BRT, your OA won't reflect that rate for a full 10 years. It will reflect it for the rest of the current BRT, and then it will reset. This is different than we have operated in the past, so an example is in order. Say a BRT is started in 2025. You, the customer, move into that building 7 years later in 2032. Your OA gets the existing BRT, just like every other OA in the building, for the next 3 years through the end of the BRT in 2035. Then the BRT is reset for a 10-year term and is pushed to all OAs in the building. Continuing the theme of alignment and consistency, operating and parking rates will escalate in October of each year, regardless of when they started, and will escalate by the national escalation percentage for that fiscal year. Again, this applies to owned occupancies only. The only exception is buildings that use actual operating rates. They will continue to bill actual rates and will be reset in October, but they are not part of the automatic national escalations. When new operating and parking rates are created in OASIS, they will automatically end in September. Note that future estimated operating and parking rates are no longer shown on the OA. When PBS remeasures space, often because of a project, those new measurements will be captured in the location data at the time of the remeasurement, but the OAs are not automatically updated as a result. Instead, only after customer agencies have had time to budget will the OAs be updated with the remeasured square footage. You will be able to see both the remeasured square footage and the agreed to billing square footage for your OA in OASIS. Note that OASIS allows different blocks of space and space types to have different rates, so there's no need to blend rates as we've had to do in the past. All the rates you see in OASIS will be the actual rate for the space, block, and type. Congratulations! You've just completed the Introduction to OASIS and Pricing Policy Changes for Customer Training. In this module, we provided an overview of how OASIS works, described the new occupancy agreement, gave examples of OA approval workflows, and highlighted several pricing policy changes you will notice when using OASIS. Be sure to check out the rest of the OASIS customer training modules for detailed demonstrations of OASIS in action. And remember to visit the OASIS page by going to gsa.gov and searching for Occupancy Agreement System.